Shalom, Shalom, Shabbat Adonai. Welcome to the Sixth Exodus program. Thank you for listening. The name of this segment is George Washington Goes to Jerusalem. I'd like to read to you the book of Jeremiah, chapter 52. Jeremiah, chapter 52. In the Bible, it mentions George Washington as Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon. All right, let's begin. I'll read to you the entire chapter. Part of American history is missing. Here it is right here. Let's begin. Zedekiah was 1 and 20 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. But through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, till he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, and besieged against it, and built forts against it round about. So the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And in the 4th month, in the 9th day of the month, the famine was sore in the city, so that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled, and went forth out of the city by the night by the way of the gate, between the two walls, which was by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were by the city round about, and they went by the way of the plain. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king, and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. Then they took the king and carried him up unto the king of Babylon in Ribnah. Okay, let me tell you where Ribnah is located. Ribnah, there's a row of cities. It's in between Heshbon and Sukkoth. This is where Ribnah is. It's in Israel. and it is west of Shiloh, Shechem, Samaria, and Tisra, closer to Joppa on the seacoast, where Tel Aviv is. I'm going to continue with verse 8. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho. And all the army was scattered from him. Then they took the king and carried him up to the king of Babylon, to Riblah, in the land of Hamath, where he gave judgment upon him. And the king of Babylon slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. He slew also all the princes of Judah and Riblah. Then he put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and the kings of Babylon bound him in chains and carried him to Babylon and put him in prison till the day of his death. Now in the 5th month, in the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuchadrezzar, captain of the guard, which served the king of Babylon, into Jerusalem, and burned the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and all the houses of the great men burned he with fire, and all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captain of the guard brake down all the walls of Jerusalem round about. Then Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, carried away captive certain of the poor of the people, and the residue of the people that remained in the city, and those that fell away, that fell to the king of Babylon, and the rest of the multitude. But Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, left certain of the poor of the land for wine dressers, for husbandmen. Also the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases, and the brazen sea that was in the house of the Lord, the Chaldeans break, and carry all the brass to them to Babylon. The cauldron also, and the shovels, and the scoffers, and the bowls, and the spoons, and all the vessels of brass wherewith they ministered, took they away. And the basin, and the frying pan, and the bowls, and the cauldrons, and the candlesticks, and the spoons, and the cups that was of gold, and that which was of silver, took the captain of the guard away. The 2 pillars, 1 sea, and 12 brazen bulls that were under the basin which King Solomon had made in the house of the Lord. The brass of all the vessels was without weight. And concerning the pillars, the height of the pillars was 18 cubits, and the fillet of 12 cubits did compass it, and the thickness thereof was 4 fingers. It was hollow, and a chapiter of brass was upon it, and the height of one chapiter was 5 cubits, with network of pomegranates, and upon the chapiter round about all of brass. The second pillar also and the pomegranates were like unto these. And there were 96 pomegranates on one side, and all the pomegranates upon the network were 100 round about. And the captain of the guard took Serara and the chief priest and Zephaniah the second priest and 3 keepers of the door. He took also out of the city a eunuch which had the charge of the men of war, and 7 men of them that were near the king's person, which were found in the city. And the principal scribe of the host, who mustered the people of the land, and 60 men of the people of the land that were round in the midst of the city. So Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took them and brought them to the king of Babylon in Riblah. And the king of Babylon smote them, and he put them to death in Riblah, in the land of Hamath. Thus Judah was carried away captive out of his land, out of his own land. This is the people whom Nebuchadrezzar carried away captive in the 7th year, 3,000 Jews and 23. And the 18th year of Nebuchadrezzar, he carried away captives from Jerusalem 832 persons. And the 23rd year, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away captive of the Jews 745 persons. All the persons were 4,600. And it came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, in the 5th and 20th day of the month, that Evil-Merodach, king of Babylon, in the 1st year of his reign, lifted up the head of Jehoiakim of Judah, and brought him forth out of prison, and spake kindly unto him, and set his throne above the throne of the kings that were with him in Babylon, and changed his prison garments, and he did continue to eat bread before him all the days of his life. And for his diet There was a continual diet given him of the king of Babylon every day, a portion until the day of his death, all the day of his life. Now I would like to read to you a small portion of the book of Lamentation, the actions of George Washington and his generals when they besieged Judah and Jerusalem. How does the city sit solitary that was full of people? How is she become a widow? She was great amongst the nations and princess amongst the provinces. How is she becomes tributary? She weepeth sore in the night, and her tears are on her cheeks. Amongst all her lovers, she hath none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They are become her enemies. Judah is gone into captivity because of affliction and because of great servitude. She dwelt amongst the heathens. She finds no rest. All her persecutors overtook her between the straits. The ways of Zion do mourn because none come to her solemn feast. All her gates are desolate. Her priests sigh. Her virgins are afflicted, and she is in bitterness. Her adversaries are the chief. Her enemies prosper. For the Lord has afflicted her for the multitude of her transgressions. Her children are gone into captivity before the enemy, and from the daughters of Zion all her beauty is departed. Her princes are become like harts that find no pasture, and they are gone without strength before the pursuer. Jerusalem remembered in the days of her affliction and of her miseries all her pleasant things that she had in the days of old, when her people fell into the hands of the enemy, and none did help her. The adversaries saw her and did mock at her Sabbaths. Jerusalem hath grievously sinned, therefore she is removed. All that honored her despise her, because they have seen her nakedness. Yea, she sigheth and turneth backwards. Her filthiness is in her skirts. She remembered not her last end, therefore she came down wonderfully. She hath no comforter. O Lord, behold my affliction, for the enemy has magnified himself. The adversary has spread out his hand upon all her pleasant things. For she hath seen that the heathen enter into her sanctuary, whom thou didst command that thou shouldst not enter into thy congregation. All her people sigh. They seek bread. They had given their pleasant things for meat to relieve their souls. See, O Lord, and consider, I am become vile. Is it nothing to you, all ye that pass by? Behold, and see, if there be any sorrow like unto my sorrow, which is done unto me, wherewith the Lord has afflicted me in the day of his fierce anger. From above has he sent fire into my bones, and it prevaileth against them. He has spread his net for my feet. He has turned me back. He has made me desolate and faint all the day. The yoke of my transgression is bound by my hand. They were withered. They are withered and came up upon my neck. He hath made my strength fail. The Lord has delivered me into the hands of whom I am not able to rise up. The Lord hath trodden down underfoot all my mighty men. In the midst of me he hath called an assembly against me to crush my mighty men. The Lord hath trodden down the virgin, the daughter of Judah, as in a winepress. For these things I weep, my eyes runneth down with water, because the Comforter that hath relieved my soul is far from me. My children are desolate, because the enemy prevailed. Zion spreadeth forth her hands, and there is none to comfort her. The Lord has commanded concerning Jacob, that his adversaries should be round about him. Jerusalem is as a menstruous woman amongst them. The Lord is righteous, but I have rebelled against his commandments. Hear, I pray you, all people, and behold my sorrow. My virgins and my young men are gone into captivity. I called for my lovers, but they deceived me. My priests and my elders gave up the ghost in the city, while they sought their meat to relieve their souls. Behold, O Lord, for I am in distress. My bowels are troubled. My heart is turned within me, for I have grievously rebelled. Abroad the sword bereaveth. At home there is as death. They have heard that I sigh. There is none to comfort me. All my enemies have heard of my trouble. They are glad that thou hast done it. Thou wilt bring the day that thou hast called, and they shall be like unto me, like all their wickedness come before thee, and do unto them as thou hast done unto me. And all my transgressions for my sight are many, and my heart is faint. How hath the Lord covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud in his anger, and cast down the heavens upon the earth the beauty of Israel, and remembered not his footstool in the day of his anger. The Lord hath swallowed up all the inhabitations of Jacob, and hath not pitied. He has thrown down in his wrath the strongholds of the daughters of Judah. He has brought down to the ground. He has polluted the kingdom of his princes thereof. He has cut off in his fierce anger all the horn of Israel. He has drawn back his right hand from before the enemy. He has burned against Jacob like a flaming fire, which devoured round about. He has bent his bow like an enemy. He stood with his right hand as an adversary, and slew all that was pleasant to the eye And in the tabernacle of the daughters of Zion he poured out his fury like fire. The Lord was an enemy. He has swallowed up Israel. He has swallowed up all her palaces. He has destroyed his stronghold and has incensed the daughters of Judah, mourning and lamentation. He has vehemently taken away the tabernacle as if it were a garden. He has destroyed his place, his palaces, and his assembly. The Lord has caused the solemn feast and the Sabbath to be forgotten in Zion, and has despised in the indignation of the anger, the king and the priest. The Lord has cast off his altar and have abhorred his sanctuary. He has given up unto the hands of the enemy the walls of her palaces. They have made the noise in the house of the Lord. As in the day of solemn feast, the Lord has purposed to destroy the walls, the daughters of Zion. He has stretched out a line and hath not withdrawn his hand from destroying, therefore, and made a rampart and a wall to lament. They languish together. Her gates are sunk into the ground. He has destroyed the broken her bars. The king and her princes are amongst the Gentiles. The law is no more. Her prophets also find no vision from the Lord. The elders of the daughters of Zion sit upon the ground and kept silence, and have cast of dust upon their heads. They have girded themselves with sackcloth. The virgins of Jerusalem hang their heads to the ground. My eyes do fail with tears. My bowels are troubled. My liver is poured upon the earth for the destruction of the daughter of my people, because the children and the sucklings swoon in the streets of the city. They say to their mother, where is corn and wine? When they swoon as the wounded in the streets of the city, when their souls was poured out into their mother's bosom. What thing shall I take to witness for thee? What things shall I take to thee, O daughter of Jerusalem? What shall I equal to thee, that I may comfort thee, O virgin daughter of Zion? For thy breach is great like the sea. Who can heal thee? Thy prophets have seen vain and foolish things for thee, and they have not discovered thine iniquity. To turn away thy captivity, but have seen for thee false burdens, and cause banishment. All that passes by clap their hands at thee. They hiss and wag their hands. And the daughters of Jerusalem saying, is this a city that men call the perfection of beauty, the joy of the whole earth? All thine enemies have opened their mouth against thee. They hiss and gash their teeth. They say, we have swallowed her up. Certainly, this is the day we look for. We have found, we have seen it. The Lord hath done that which he hath devised. He hath fulfilled his word. that he had commanded in the days of old, and has thrown down, has not pitied. He has caused the enemy to rejoice over thee. He that set thee up the horn of thine adversaries. Thine heart cried unto the Lord, O walls of the daughter of Zion. Let tears run down like a river day and night. Give thyself no rest. Let not the apple of thine eye cease. Arise, cry out in the night. In the beginning of the watches, pour out thy heart like water before the face of the Lord. Lift up thy hands toward him for the life of thy young children that faint for hunger in the top of every street. Behold, O Lord, and consider to whom thou hast done this. Shall the woman eat their own fruit, and children of a span long? Shall the priest of the prophet be slain in the sanctuary of the Lord? The young and the old lie upon the ground in the streets. My virgins and my young men are fallen by the sword. Thou hast slain them in the day of thine anger. Thou hast killed and not pitied. Thou hast called as a solemn day for terror around about, so that in the day of the Lord's anger none escape nor remain. Those that I have swaddled and brought up has my enemy consumed. I'm going to stop there. This ends the segment of George Washington Destroys Jerusalem. Thank you for listening and have a great day.